If you want to have a healthier, more productive relationship with your senior pastor, this is part 2 of our conversation about that very topic, teaching you how to build trust and improve communication and just find a good working relationship with your senior pastor. And I'm joined again by Hans Ives, who has worked with Pastor Greg Laurie for over 28 years, and CJ Blunt from Church on the Highlands, who worked with Pastor Chris Hodges for 17 years. And both of those pastors have very different styles of leading. And so you're going to get two really great and wise perspectives from our guests. So let's welcome them to the screen. I have to say this, I was actually finding clips of you guys for the introduction, and I was like, both of you are so extremely handsome. But Hans, your biceps, bro, are like, you're playing your like Black Gretsch guitar and your biceps are like pythons. And I was like, dude, I got to be like this guy when I'm his age. If you got it, flaunt it. Is that what they say? No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, so I'd love to actually start the conversation around a transition that CJ has recently gone through. And CJ had worked with Pastor Chris Hodges from Church on the Highlands for 17 years and obviously learned all of Chris's likes, desires, the way he works, the way he communicates. And yet, just about a year ago, I believe, CJ got a new senior pastor. And I would love for you to share how that's been, and also share what should a worship leader's mindset be when a new senior pastor comes in, and what sort of posture should they take to navigate that strange and sticky unknown.
You use that word posture. I love that you use that word because I think that's important for worship leaders across the board. Your posture in worship, but also your posture for leadership and authority is really important. You have to be open-handed when you're making these kind of transitions. You have to be open-minded and you have to have an open heart. And the reason I'm saying those three things, open-handed, open mind, open heart, is because you're really vulnerable in that stage. You got to get over your insecurities. It's like, man, I've been used to this person and I think I did it well because I mean, to have that longevity under one leader. Yeah. Now switching, if you don't have the right posture, you can make the wrong move. If your insecurities get in the way, you can move too quickly. My posture is, Lord, what do you want to do in this moment? I'm open-handed, I'm open-minded, I'm open-hearted to whatever you have for me. And I'm going to serve this leader in a way that I'm not attached to anything. So that's the open-handed part. Because if you're attached to what was, and they have to pry you off of what was to get what is to come, right? And so that hurts. And that's where people get hurt. They say, man, I got hurt by leadership in the transition. Well, you're probably too close-handed in your previous role to move on to the next. And so that creates hurt, right? But then if you're not open-minded, the other thing I think about is, man, new leader, new thoughts, new innovation, new ideas. Like I've been following the same leader for that long and my ideas were accepted, things like that. So if I'm not open-minded, now I'm like closed-minded to all the ideas that are coming. And that creates frustration. So now it's like you're frustrated, you're hurting, I'm ready to go, right? And then the open-hearted part is to the leader and their family. Just being open-hearted and like, man, I love you. I accept you as my leader, my authority. Whatever you want to speak into my life, I'm open to it. And that just puts you in a posture of humility that allows you to receive things differently and not get in a place where you just feel like insecure about all your thoughts, all the things that you've done, and now moving on, what am I going to do? And I think that's really the posture to take, that posture of humility, of just being open to whatever God has for you, but also sincerely respecting the leader. So I've literally had to walk this through and I'm still walking it through. I'm vulnerable. I've done a lot of things, but will he like some of the ideas I have? Will I be open to the ideas he has? What is he going to change? I mean, I'm talking to my team constantly right now about, hey, be open to what's going to change. I know we've done it that way, but the reason I haven't made a decision on this yet is because I want to give room for my leadership. And when I say that, they're like, okay, well, so we can't move on. No, I don't want to move on that yet. I want to respect leadership and see where he wants to go. He might not want to go there. I don't know. And so I'm being really vulnerable in that space as a leader to say, I don't know. I'm listening and learning just in the same pace that you are. And I think sometimes as leaders, we need to be ahead. But in some places like this, we need to understand how to just be present with our team in the vulnerability of transition. And that's what I'm feeling the most right now.
That's great. I love the idea of being open-handed and open-hearted and all of these opens that you shared, because it is going to look different and you have to be open. Do you think there might come a point where you're like, I'm open, and it's like, actually, I don't want to be open to this kind of a leader or the way he wants to go or the way he wants to do things? Do either of you have thoughts about when we should shift from I'm open to actually I'm not in alignment and I should maybe move on or do something else?
Well, I think you mentioned, Alex, earlier when you were making your introduction of trust, the word trust. And I think that's when you know it's closed. If you
Mm.
don't have trust, you need to know you need to get out of there. I've actually had this conversation with people I lead, like, hey, if you don't trust my leadership, then I think you need to be praying about where you need to be, because I don't want to be under any leadership that I don't trust. You move differently under mistrust. And that's the part that hurts the organization as a whole. You start hurting people around you, things like that. So if there's no trust, I think that to me is my first inclination of that's closed. In order to open it up, I need to go back and talk to them and see if I can trust, or I need to ask God to lead me out. That's
Wow. I actually, at my last church, I've only been at my new church for a year and a half, and my last church, what you just described is exactly what happened. I didn't trust him and he didn't trust me for various reasons. And it was just like a complete closed door. Like we couldn't move forward, you know. We both tried. I stayed for 2 years. I think Hans walked with me through some of that. So
I would say this, first of all, I love your attitude, CJ, in regards to how you're navigating through this transition and how you're doing that. Speed of the leader, speed of the team. So the people that are underneath you are watching you in that attitude of humility, openness in every way, and they're going to benefit from your model in that moment, because for sure they've got those same levels of, wow, man, well, CJ's going to be okay. And if CJ's not okay, man, that probably means I'm not okay.
right.
You know what I mean? So I think that's really beautiful. And I would say in regards to knowing when it's time to go, should you stay, all that stuff. First of all, that question, I don't think it ever goes away. I don't think it should. I think you should be evaluating all the time. And I don't want to get super overly spiritual, but every day is, Lord, lead me in the paths of righteousness for your name's sake.
Right.
And I'm your kid. This life isn't even my own. It's been purchased with a price. So, like, tell me what to do. If you're asking God all the time, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? He's pretty faithful to answer that question.
Right.
you should always get overly spiritual on a worship leader podcast.
Come on. Let's do it.
Don't apologize.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, I'd love to ask you in the last conversation, and if anybody missed that, I'm going to link it below, and you should definitely watch it because there's so much gold. That's why we're doing a part 2. But in the last conversation, we talked about some of the actions you guys have taken to build trust with a senior pastor. But I'd love to speak to someone who's already got a relationship on the rocks. And let's say there's a worship leader listening who they are having a hard time with their senior pastor. And I don't want you to tell them, hey, it's time to go, because we kind of already covered that in the last conversation. I want you to tell us what that person should do to try to turn it around. What would you do if you were just in a rocky spot with your senior pastor? How would you try to turn that relationship around?
I think the first thing I would do, I would tell that person, as much as possible, try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Think about their experience, what they may be going through. Try to identify with their world, and then imagine yourself with the stresses, the strains, the decisions that they have to make, and then say, okay, if that was me, then how would I be acting? And then how can I best serve them? I think ultimately it would come down to how can I best serve that person? My wife has said to me through the years, when we've had issues with people or whatever, she said, you know what, I'm not going to pray for God to change them. I'm going to pray for God to change me. Because you can't control the other person. You can control you. So I think evaluate them, try and put yourself in their shoes, and then constantly be asking the Lord, what are you wanting to do in me to help this relationship? I guess I would say that.
That's great. I got like 2 answers to it. One is really harsh. I'll give you the life-giving one first, because I think this is something that's really close to me even now as a leader. There's times where, you get a lot of people frustrated at you, and how you receive that really tells where you're at. So I would say the first life-giving thing is to write down why you're so frustrated, write down the things that you disagree with, write them down, and then just look at them. And then say, man, that's a human. That's not God. And so when you see that and you see the flaws, you realize you're in the same boat.
Exactly.
But seeing that, I think, helps you. So if you're writing down, they're very quick with their words. Oh, it doesn't seem like they care about me. Things like that. You'll see a lot of things that are subjective, or even they pertain to your liking. And so when you see it out of that lens, you're like, man, it's a lot of stuff that's just me. Like, I don't hear anybody else saying it. Or maybe you do hear people saying it, but for you specifically, I think that's one level of just kind of getting into a space of they're human. And God has placed them in that position for a reason. So how can I overcome that? I can basically look at these flaws and say they're human, but their heart is there. I'm going to go in and have a conversation. And then the second one is really just a simple word. And that's why I was telling you, I feel like it's harsh, but it's true. And this is what I had to write down for myself and say to myself: get over yourself. That's it. That's the phrase: get over yourself. Because for me, a lot of times I'm like, man, this person, they're frustrated at me because they don't have it together. But then when I'm like, get over myself, I'm like, man, that's still my preferences. Those are still things that are preferences to me versus what God is trying to do in the whole. So I have to get over myself to allow me to step into more conversation in regards to what we disagree on.
I love it. I want to add this. Nobody, unless the Lord is really speaking directly to you, saying you need to endure this. If it's abuse, if you're being treated poorly as a human, I don't think you necessarily, unless, like I said, unless the Lord is really directing you, saying, I want you to endure this for whatever reason he might have. Maybe you're an example to somebody else. But if the relationship is abusive, if you're being abused, don't hang with that.
Can we stay there just for a second,
Yeah,
Hon?
go for
Even
it.
on that word abusive, that today has grown. That word has grown to this bigger thing that people can feel like they're abused just by somebody saying they don't like what they like.
Right.
Right. And when you said that, I was like, that's great to present, because I feel like I've had more conversations with people that are so offended and they use that even as abuse.
Yeah, that is
Like,
definitely
right. What is abuse? I would love to know more about, or even hear more about, of what would that be?
I think it's good that you said that, CJ, because somebody coming to you and saying, I don't like the way you did what you did today, that's not abuse.
Right.
Somebody coming to you and saying, hey, you know what? I don't think you should wear that shirt anymore. That's not abuse, right?
Right.
Somebody trying to keep you down mentally, oppress you, put you in a position of vulnerability when there's no reason to do that. I mean, right. I don't think you should endure that.
That's great.
I agree. We have become softer as a society, and everything that offends us can be labeled abuse, but it's actually not. But there are cruel, unkind, harsh, toxic, abusive pastors, leaders, not just pastors, but in every sphere of society, there are those people that don't treat people well. And I think you should, unless you feel 1,000% called to a place, I think you should probably be in a place that's healthy for your soul. Yeah. That doesn't mean it's always going to be easy, and that doesn't mean you're always going to agree. But if you are shriveling up like a raisin and dying inside because of a work environment, it might not be what the Lord has for you, unless he specifically said, like Han said, endure this,
But I think that the Lord, man, he loves his kids so much. And my guess is he's probably already speaking to that person saying, you need to get out. Mm-hmm. And man, it is so hard to, whatever the reasons, we're flawed, we got our flesh, we got all the fears, anxiety, whatever would keep us from making that decision and listening to the Lord. We just got to listen to the Lord. He's so great at directing us.
I want to say when CJ was talking, I had the verse come to my mind about as far as it depends upon you, live at peace with all people. And I just want to say to any worship leaders listening who are having a tough time in their relationship with their pastor, where there's not a lot of trust, where communication seems to keep breaking down, I just want to ask you, dear worship leader, friend, how much have you invested into the relationship? How many steps have you taken towards your senior pastor? How many gestures of kindness and generosity and encouragement have you sent in the direction of your senior pastor? When's the last time you invited them and their spouse over to your house for dinner? Maybe they will never invite you, but you should invite them. And I'd say if it's the same gender relationship, we'll get into the mixed gender dynamic later here in a second. But if it's the same gender, go out to coffee or take them out to lunch, or on their birthday, bring them chocolate and a gift. And like, when's the last time, dear worship leader, that you've taken steps towards your senior pastor? I would say if you're in a rough situation, you want to start making more of those types of gestures. So I would love to shift, because part of this conversation came out of a conversation in the academy of a female worship leader, because everyone was advising her, hey, you need to like meet with your senior pastor more, and you need to like get on the same page and maybe start to go to lunch weekly. And she was like, I don't really feel comfortable going to lunch with a man. And I know everybody falls on a different line in that spectrum of going out with, I don't personally go out with or even meet alone with women, but I know different people feel differently about that. But what would you say to the female worship leaders listening about how can they foster a closer, deeper, more understanding relationship with their senior pastor without crossing any boundaries or putting each other in a dangerous situation? Because attraction does happen just by spending time with someone and getting to know them more. So do you guys have any thoughts about that dynamic for the female worship leaders listening? If you're feeling stuck, mediocre, or inadequate in your ministry, if you know there must be a better way of doing things, but you're not sure how, if you're looking for fresh inspiration and new ideas that will improve your ministry and give you a team that you're proud of leading, then I invite you to join me and over 1,400 worship leaders from all over the world who are growing inside the Worship Ministry Training Academy. Our C3 format is proven to get you results because you get courses, coaching, and community. The courses teach you what to do, the coaches help you apply it to your specific situation, and the community helps you stay accountable and encouraged as you take the right steps to improve the ministry God has called you to. Get access to over a dozen practical courses, 20 time-saving templates, done-for-you team discipleship material, and live expert interviews with guests like Matt Redman, Christian Stanfill, Charity Gale, and others. The best part is it's completely free to try for 15 days, yes, free. And if you decide to sign up, the Academy is by far the most affordable online worship school that there is out there. Join thousands of other worship leaders like Alicia and Jaime, who both say the Academy has completely transformed their ministry. I hope you'll start your free trial today, take the guesswork out of building a thriving worship ministry, and get a proven game plan to success. Go to worshipministrytraining.com and click that big red button, and I hope to see you inside the Academy this week. But what would you say to the female worship leaders listening about how can they foster a closer, deeper, more understanding relationship with their senior pastor without crossing any boundaries or putting each other in a dangerous situation? Because attraction does happen just by spending time with someone and getting to know them more. So do you guys have any thoughts about that dynamic for the female worship leaders listening? CJ is smiling.
Honest, go ahead. Honestly, Alex, I'm not too qualified to answer that in a female's perspective because I'm not a female. Obviously.
Wait, I thought we could be whatever we want.
That's another conversation. We probably need a part 3. But what I can speak to is just accountability, always putting it at the forefront. That's a filter to have. Protection. I think that's another filter to have as a female. I think those two things are what I think about when you say that. I've seen where it has been unhealthy. And when it's been unhealthy between a female and a male senior pastor or leader, it's always been vulnerability, no accountability, and no protection, where that eventually is exposed, of course, because it's been an ongoing thing. And so I would always start there. If I'm going into the conversation as the opposite sex, as a female and a male leader, I would make sure, okay, what is my accountability here?
Yeah.
Where's the protection here? And then is this a vulnerable conversation? Because one thing I don't allow in, because I have a lot of females on my team as well, and I'll bring, as you saw, Alex, my admin is Abby, and I'll bring her into a lot of those conversations just because if anything is said or misconstrued or anything like that. She's there to protect that. I'm always looking through those filters of protection and accountability, because I never wanted to be misled or said that I said something I shouldn't have, or directed them in some way that I shouldn't have. And I don't meet one-on-one in that sense. But I think you just need to have those filters as a female or male, because it happens with males too.
Can I just ask you to be a little bit more specific in terms of protection and accountability? Those are more overarching terms. Are there specific actions underneath that kind of fill that out a little bit?
I would always make sure that there's someone who is in the conversation, knowing what conversation is even going into that. That to me is another way of accountability. For example, if I was a female or something, hey, I'm going to talk to my senior pastor about this. Do you hear anything alarming? No, I don't hear anything. Okay. And then I would love for you to go with me, because I want to have that protection. Or we're going to be in his office. There's glass everywhere, so people be there. Do you mind even sitting right out there and being there for me to know that there's somebody right there that can be a part of it? I think those are practical ways that you can do that. Always having somebody that you filter the conversation through before and after. Even now, I've learned I have to send a follow-up email of, hey, so this is what we talked about. Even in my conversation with that person, so what did you hear me say? And then Abby is jotting it down. Okay, they heard it. Okay, yes. Just to protect myself and them in the conversations moving forward. I think those are practical ways, if that helps, Alex.
I would say first that it would be good, if possible, and I know that this is even hard, but set parameters and boundaries like right from the get-go. And hopefully, if the senior pastor, I would think if the senior pastor is wise, that they would do that themselves. They would set that boundary immediately and say, hey, whenever you and I meet, the door is always going to be open. Or if I have to say something to you about something you need to address with a team member, then it'd be great to have somebody in the room with you for accountability. I agree with that. But also that the blinds are never drawn. So hopefully the senior pastor would establish those boundaries right away. If the senior pastor does not, then I think in a non-confrontive way, just say, hey, you know what? I'm really excited about serving under you. This is not intended to be weird at all, but I think for my protection and for yours as well, here's some things I think we should always do in regards to when we meet, and see what they say. And by the way, if they say like, oh, that sounds horrible, then that is a red flag right away. As a leader of the ministry here, if the lady came to me and said that, I'd be like, exactly, perfect. Yes, let's do exactly that. Mm-hmm. So I think setting boundaries for yourself there's nothing wrong with that. And then just following with that, all that stuff's great.
Yeah. I had a female assistant at my last church, and early on, I also listed out these, hey, when we meet, this is how it's going to go. I'm not going to try to be... The problem is, like, you have to actually follow through, and sometimes I wouldn't follow through. Like, sometimes, for example, if her and her boyfriend were going through stuff, I had this sense that, well, I need to be a good leader to her and care for her by giving her advice or whatever. And it's like, actually, Alex, you probably shouldn't have. And so I need to keep the boundaries that I set. I would say too, like with the females or male dynamic, don't share the personal, vulnerable stuff. This is my opinion. People can disagree with me, but I feel like we should be equal and be able to share like the hard stuff with each other and support each other. But actually, we should probably redirect the people to the same gender. There's a lady at church who just got saved, and I was her follow-up. I'm supposed to call her after she gets saved, So I called her. And so it kind of began a relationship. And I saw her in the halls the other day, and I was like, I'm so glad you're getting plugged in. And then she emailed me like a question about like a more tricky situation. And I actually sent her a message back, said, hey, I'm in a really busy season, and I'm going to redirect you to our women's ministry director because you're going to see her more anyway. And I'm going to let her answer this. So I wasn't harsh or mean or awkward. I just redirected. And I think that's a much healthier thing than me shepherding this new young believer girl, or woman in her 30s. So I just think we shouldn't overshare stuff. That's my opinion. I could be.
I think that's good advice.
It's tough though, because I think what we want to tell the ladies is, yeah, do these things to foster a deeper connection with your senior pastor. But the truth is, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should keep it super above, just like we work together. I text the girls on my team only as it pertains to, hey, does this key work for you? Or
No,
hey, can you jump in on bass for youth band?
great.
You know what? I am very careful to text.
Same.
There's only a couple of ladies on our team that I would text directly without somebody else in that thread, because I've known them probably for 20 plus years and they're almost like my daughters. But even still, it's good to be really careful. We just got to remember the enemy. He's lost the battle for our souls. So the only thing he has left is to try and defeat, distract, and diminish our effectiveness.
Come
And
on.
he's perfectly happy to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just got to guard against that. You know what? You use the word deeper connection with your pastor. I don't know, like you want to have a connection with your pastor. You want to be in alignment with them, ministry, directives, like where you're headed as a church, what is required, what the pastor is hoping for you as a leader of the ministry. I believe those connections are important.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not you have like a friendship relationship, I mean, I think you should. That would be helpful. But the word deeper connection, I don't know, maybe I'm reading way too much into that, but I don't know that you need that.
I receive that. I just want to point out to the audience the fact that 8-9 years ago, I did an interview with this guy who has a PhD, I think, in adulterous relationships or something crazy like that. And he said that texting the opposite gender or DMing on Instagram at this point is like one of the most dangerous. I can't remember the stat, and I'll just put the episode. So anyway, if you're a female working with a male or a male working with a female, I'm going to put this episode below. It's really old, but it's really good. And yeah, so I think
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it is.
I'd love to get your guys' advice on speaking pastor's language. So if you come to your pastor and you have an idea and you got to pitch your idea, or you want to buy this piece of gear or whatever it is that you're going through, what language and how should you frame the idea in a way that resonates with a senior pastor? We're all creative and they're more logical, some of them, but how do you speak pastor language? Any tips from you guys? You've been doing this for a long time.
Man, I love this one, because even the scriptures say this, and it's very helpful. The best way to speak their language is to listen. And so if you actually listen more than you speak, you'll hear what needs to happen. And that's something that I had to learn. I had a leader that would take me into those meetings at times, and I would just listen through those meetings as Pastor Chris is speaking and things like that and doing things. And I would be like, oh, okay, he did. And then I would see how we presented things that he didn't like. And he would actually be clear in his communication of why he didn't like it. So then taking those notes back, okay, that's why he didn't. And I'm telling you, Alex, for years, I was dissecting that of like, he didn't like that. Okay. But then we pitched this and he didn't like it, but he said he didn't. And I was dissecting all of that. I'm telling you, to where I got it down to a T, to where I would say, oh, I think I got it. Okay. We don't need to present that song that way. I don't think it resonates with him when you send him a video of somebody else doing it. What if we recorded it, send it to him in a way that he heard us doing it, and see if that worked? And it would just start to stack up at that point. You'd be like, huh? Because I was learning, I was observing, I was listening to his language. I was listening to what resonated with him. I think it's two-sided in that, though. If you're not hearing anything that prompts you to change or kind of move things in a way that you think you can present it better, I think then you have to ask the right questions. Come in, hey, so I see that you didn't like that. Tell me a little bit more. What were some of the things you didn't like? Well, I don't know what I didn't like. I just didn't like it. Okay, that's harder, but I think I was blessed in that way to have a pastor who can articulate why they didn't like it and then take it back and learn from it. So that allowed me to speak more of his language, listening more. When he was around different people, I would go to different rooms that had nothing to do with the music side and even listen to how he was speaking to it. And I would go and dissect it when I was at home, and it eliminated a lot of frustration. I'll say that. I had a lot of frustration on the front end because I wasn't listening. I just wanted to push my agenda. But then once I started listening, I was able to grasp a lot of things that he was saying and present it in a way to see what actually resonated. I guess that's pastor talk.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Hans, I'm sure you have some wisdom on talking to
I,
Greg.
I just like the word pastor talk. I was like, okay, just be observant, asking questions when needed, but also listening very carefully when direction comes, and then anticipating, putting those things together, being wise enough to put those things together, and then do your best to foster a relationship where you can share things and know when to ask and know when not to. Know when just to do something and then know when to, like, wait a minute, I've watched and learned and I've seen before. This is a line that I need to make sure that I'm asking before I do this.
I want to just say my wife always says, don't ask someone for something before lunch because they're hungry and they're going to say no. So even what you said, when should I ask? When should I not ask? I think that's huge.
That's great.
I always try to frame my request or my idea and align it back to what the senior pastor wants most. So because I've learned and listened, like CJ said, I know what my pastor likes. I know what he wants. I know what's important to him. And therefore, when I come to him with a request or an idea or something that I want to change or do or buy or whatever, I try to connect the dots back to his mission, his idea, his vision, so that he sees that I'm not rogue. I think you used that word last time, CJ. I'm not rogue off on my own thing. I'm doing his thing, and this is how my thing attaches to his thing and helps him achieve his thing. Is that, you want to add to that, anyone?
Well, I would just say, first of all, that's where that open hand, this is not my ministry. As soon as you say it's my thing, that's like the first nail in the coffin of you being gone. Because the Lord will remind you, it's like, no, it's not your thing. What do you have that you haven't been given? The fact that your brain's working, the fact that your lungs are working, the fact that you can sing at all, that you have ears that hear music, like, I gave you that. This is not yours. You're a steward, and the same thing applies to our senior pastors. They have given us the keys to the congregation for, let's say the time is 15 minutes a week or whatever it is. This is when the whole church is coming together. They have entrusted to you that time. Man, we need to cherish that giving. We need to cherish that and respect the fact that that's been given to us and operate in a sense, in an organic, holistic mode of, this isn't my thing, and then I'm handing off to you, now you do your thing. No, this is like overarching existential church discussion more than it is just worship leading discussion.
Come on, that's great. Yeah, and one thing to even speak to that is I think about when we're even asking the question, how to speak the pastor's language more, you got to be careful as a leader of the church in how you speak to your team regarding your pastor. You got to understand you're the mouthpiece. And I think sometimes we abuse that more than we use it to help. Does that make sense? So for me saying I listen more to learn his language, to be able to communicate, but also bring back a solution for him to help him. I think sometimes I hear it where, for example, if somebody brings you an idea from your team and you say, yeah, pastor wouldn't like that. You got to be careful because now you're still a mouthpiece for him and you're saying pastor wouldn't like that. And it's like, well, who said that? But they're taking your words as gold. So even speaking pastor language, I think it's really important to understand words you're saying carry weight as a leader. So you want to make sure you're in line with what the pastor is saying and it's not your opinion coming through. Because a lot of the pastor's voice gets distorted through yours. And that's the part where I think even pastor's language, Alex, is important to listen more than you speak, because you'll find yourself speaking more of your opinion in representation to your pastor. So now you're not speaking pastor's language. You're speaking your language on behalf of your pastor, which now distorts the view of your pastor. And that's one thing that I would say be careful of, because that's more of a close-handed kind of thing. And I'm the leader and pastor wouldn't like that. I've even called people out on that. Hey, so did he say that? And they're like, well, I just know him. Well, that's great, but I'm asking you, did he say that? Well, he didn't actually say that, but I know him. When I was like, well, I feel like I do too. And when I was in the room, he didn't say that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like that's the kind of thing you got to be careful of as a leader, because you sometimes use that as leverage to get what you want. And if you want to say what bugs me, that bugs me, because I'm like, I don't want anybody speaking on my behalf who
Right.
doesn't have the heart of me.
Yes.
Because I don't want it distorted through somebody else. Again, I know you didn't ask that, Alex, but I thought that needed to be said, in the fact that some people want to speak pastor's language so much to get their opinions across or their views across, that it's dangerous.
And I would say that the overarching theme of last week and this week is how to foster a better relationship with your pastor, right?
Yeah.
Well, one of the ways to do that is to be a representative for his heart to the team, to the congregation, as a servant.
Right.
That doesn't mean he's always going to be right, but you still have the responsibility as a servant in the church to lay down your thing and to serve the overarching whole.
Yeah. The two words that came to mind when you were talking, both of you just now: do not misrepresent your pastor. So CJ, what you were saying is do not misrepresent his heart to people to get your way. But the second thing that I thought of was don't throw your pastor under the bus. You know, like, don't talk bad about your pastor. Even if you don't fully agree with a decision he made, speak supportively of your senior pastor, and don't be like gossip, 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 or like, oh, I can't believe, like, build a little tribe or a little team underneath you that's all whispering about how the senior pastor is lame. I've totally been guilty. I've been guilty of that in the past too. And it's like, you know, it's like, we can't do that. That's dishonoring.
There's an example of that in the Bible, and his name is Absalom. We don't want to be that person. No, it'd be really easy to feed into this moment where people are kind of not happy. It'd be really easy to feed into it. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to speak positivity. I'm going to rein things in. I'm going to remind people of what we're really here for, to serve the Lord. Psalms 141:3 says, take control of what I say, O Lord, and guard my lips. One of the translations says, set a guard over my lips and keep watch over the door of my mouth. Hey, I need that like 110% of the day.
110, I'll take it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking of the two words in those moments. You're either sowing division or you're sowing unity. You're either tearing apart or you're stitching together. And it's very dangerous. Our words as worship leaders, we're the second most visible person in the church. And we have a lot more power than we realize. And we can cause a lot of cultural damage and disunity in the church if we're not careful with how we speak about our leaders and our leadership. So
yeah, that's right.
I'm glad you took us there, CJ. One last question before we begin wrapping it up. And this is now kind of speaking to the senior pastors. What can senior pastors do that seems really small, but actually is a huge help to you as the worship leader? What are things that you want the senior pastor to do that can really help you excel?
Is this a general thing, or you want it like specific to one thing? I want to make sure I'm answering your question.
You answer it however you feel led to.
So the thing that I've been saying lately, and a lot of people disagree, and it's fine to disagree, but what's on my heart lately for pastors is to really ask them to stop rolling out the red carpet. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of desperation to get talent, gifts, people who can lead on your stage that are attractive in that way. And there's this tendency to roll out the red carpet. Hey, what do you need? How can I get you here? What do you want to be able to do? Do I need to help you travel more and still be here? But to me, what that's creating is this culture of entitlement, like where when I come in, this is what I need. Here's my list of things that I need to serve you. But you're not actually saying, here's my list to serve you. You're saying, here's the list for you to serve me. That's the part that's been heavy on my heart with pastors. I'm saying, stop doing that. Pray, ask God for wisdom, and then listen for the person that you're interviewing or you want to say, hey, what do you need, Pastor? How can I come be a part? How can I come help you? Because what's turning is this need to be attractive as a church to get people, right? Jesus is attractive. That's what you need the most. They need Jesus. And so now I've seen where a lot of people come in with their agenda and they're like, here's what I need to be a part of what you're doing. And they're like, okay, so you need to travel. Okay, I'll give you this many times a year, and you need this much money, and you need this. Some of those things are important in that. But I think if you're asking me the question, what do I need pastors to do? I just need them to be not only more prayerful in their approach to getting worship leaders, but more dialed in to the need to have somebody to serve the vision God has given you, because he's given you a vision for a reason.
Yeah. I would just say that as much as is possible, and even if music is not necessarily a language that you know how to speak, I would say that if a senior pastor could even write down, here are the 3 things that I'm hoping you will achieve when you're leading worship on Sunday morning, or this is the overarching thing that I want. I mean, even if it's just one, if it's one thing, but 3 would be great. More than that would be great. But like articulating as clearly as you can, even without musical languages, that's fine. But just saying, this is what I'm hoping you will accomplish to help me.
Yeah, that's huge. So you're saying the best thing a senior pastor can give a worship leader is a target to aim at. This is what success looks like, and define it clearly. I love that.
Great.
Yep, exactly. Because otherwise you're constantly trying new things and you're like, is this it? Oh, I think he smiled.
Yeah.
Let's get clear, like here's a clear target for success.
Great.
Yeah.
And in the process, what would be great is defining what success is, like overarching success. And also there are certain Sundays when the vision for the Sunday, the overarching thing, is different than it would be the 51 other Sundays of the year, right? Hey, here's what success is for this week. But overarching goals, that'd be really, really helpful.
Yeah. A couple of our academy students are saying, like Ginger says, what her pastor could do to help her is give her vision, what his vision is. And then Kay said that she would actually like more criticism from her pastor, so more constructive criticism. So
sure.
I thought you guys might say, here's mine. It's so shallow. I just want to get the sermons in advance, man. Can you just please, it's so small. Can you just get me the sermons in advance? And I operate 4 to 8 weeks in advance. And so having the text and the scriptures is really helpful for me. So that's my small one. But
28 years of serving with Pastor Greg, that's not the way that works for me.
Yeah, for sure. That's funny. I want to give you guys a chance to give some final encouragement and wisdom to the worship leaders. But before you do, which I know it's going to be good, is there anything each of you would like to tell our audience about? So Hans, I know you have a little 5-song, 7-song EP that you just released. Do you want to promote that, or do you want to promote something else? Or
I'll say 2 things. So first of all, our church, Harvest, we have music out that our church has been producing for the past couple of years. Actually, we've got music from way, way back, but there's stuff that's recent. And then me as an individual, about a year and a half ago, I got very interested in lo-fi as a genre. I've started creating lo-fi music. And so Alex, if you want to post in the thread my handle on Spotify and stuff, the whole idea behind me doing it was, first of all, I got just intrigued by the music. And I thought, well, I should try and make that. And then as I was making it, I was like, this really feels like I'm trying to tap into the thing that David was tapping into when he was playing music before Saul, and it was soothing people. That's my whole intent of creating it, is to create that kind of environment. And it's fun. It's just like a side expression for me, a way for me to get my mind off of anything other than just like, wow, I got to get that kick drum to sound good.
Yes. Okay. Great. I'm going to post both links for the Harvest music and then also your lo-fi. So that's good. CJ, anything on Highlands worship end that you want to talk about, or even if it's an older album?
We're currently, as you know, we talked about it earlier, in the stage of transition, and it's been the last year. So soon to come, some things that I would love to send you, Alex, and maybe hopefully send a link to some fun stuff happening.
Yeah, awesome. Sweet. In the future, when you have something new to promote, just come back on the podcast. I'm sure there's a lot we can talk about. We can talk about multi-site systems for large churches, all that stuff. So.
Yes, please. I would want to hear that from CJ 100%.
All right. Any final words for the worship leaders listening now and after the fact? It could be anything. It could be whatever you feel like is the last word that needs to be said, or it could be specifically about the senior pastor worship leader dynamic. Either of those questions is fine.
Well, okay, I'll go first. In order to foster a great relationship with your senior pastor, and I think also to be an effective worship leader, if you have the attitude of, this isn't about me, this is about how the Lord is using me in his church. If you have that attitude, and if that attitude seeps into all your decisions and all your conversations and the way you operate as a person and as a leader, I think you'll be emulating the example of Christ when it says in the scriptures, he did not come to be served, but to serve.
Come on.
And if that is your attitude, you will do well.
Well said. That's amazing. I don't want to add too much to that because I think that needs to settle in. But I would just say separate yourself and do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Get on the front end of that comma and do not be conformed to the patterns of this world anymore. To not be conformed, you got to separate yourself. I think a lot of what's happening is we're engaging more into what's happening with media, things like that, because we got access to so much. So my heart would be separate yourselves.
Wow, that's so good.
Yourselves more and more. You need the power of the Holy Spirit anyway to achieve what you need to achieve. It's not you. And so separate yourselves to get more of that, less of the world. And then watch Hans used the word success earlier, watch your success rise. And
wow, that's so good.
That is fire.
Wow.
Thank you both for all your wisdom. So we're going to move into our Academy Q&A, and we will take a couple questions from our Academy members. And if you are watching after the fact and you want to join us live for these calls and ask our guests yourself, you can try the Academy free for 15 days by going to worshipministrytraining.com and clicking the big red button. So hope to meet you inside. If you're feeling stuck, mediocre, or inadequate in your ministry, if you know there must be a better way of doing things, but you're not sure how, if you're looking for fresh inspiration and new ideas that will improve your ministry and give you a team that you're proud of leading, then I invite you to join me and over 1,400 worship leaders from all over the world who are growing inside the Worship Ministry Training Academy. In the Academy, you'll find over a dozen practical courses that will give you the confidence and skill that you need to lead with excellence. Our 20 done-for-you admin systems will save you time, streamline your ministry, and reduce the weekly stress, headaches, and chaos of leading a team. I'm talking about things like a completely done-for-you audition process and 20 other time-saving tools just as useful as that. During our weekly Monday huddles, you'll gain perspective and encouragement on the actual problems you're facing in your ministry. You'll also hear from some of your favorite worship leaders right inside the Academy. Past guests include Matt Redman, Phil Wickham, Christian Stanfield, Charity Gale, and many others. Our team devotions will help your team grow spiritually, and our musician training resources will help them improve musically. The best part is it's completely free to try for 15 days. Yes, free. And if you decide to sign up, the Academy is by far the most affordable online worship school out there. Our C3 format is proven to get you results because you get courses, coaching, and community. The courses teach you what to do, the coaches help you apply it to your specific situation, and the community helps you stay accountable and encouraged as you take the right steps to improve the ministry God has called you to. Join thousands of other worship leaders like Alicia and Jaime, who both say the Academy has completely transformed their ministry. I hope you'll start your free trial today, take the guesswork out of building a thriving worship ministry, go to worshipministrytraining.com and click that big red button, and I hope to see you this week inside the Academy.